Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. Today, I would like to address you in regards to the concept of sacrifice. I am right now contemplating the position that America's in and seeing that the current federal administration has decided what sort of sacrifices need to be made in order to fulfill their ideological version of what makes America so-called great. And I'm looking at what was accomplished during the efficiency overhaul and what is still being done under the guise of efficiency, and what was done in the name of budget cuts in order to comparatively justify tax cuts, and the things that are behind those cuts and those considerations, and focusing mainly on the idea that what seems to be indispensable to this administration is the opportunities for people who are already well-to-do. They've amassed high concentrations of wealth. Those who have developed large national and multinational corporations, and those persons within positions of government or positions of influence or positions of organization who have amassed a tremendous following of individuals. And these are the people that the current administration have deemed the serious contenders for the outcomes of their policies. So they make policies based off of the consideration of these people. And I have deemed these people the deviant echelon of society. In effect, they have set themselves apart and deviated from a collective togetherness, and have chosen for themselves a selfish independence, and at the cost of being able to tolerate or allow for a interdependence among independents. And it's the concept of like the fierce, rugged individualism that has been propagated in America by its take on capitalism and its take on government and how government is going to evolve and represent the organization of and administration of a nation. And the problem is that these very selfish individuals are not able to contend in the moral climate in such a way where they can stand with integrity and rest their laurels on the ideal that what they're doing is right, doing right by others, that it's serving the best interests of all parties involved, considerate of others. And they use plenty of justifications for this. And so the current administration is focusing on making life better for these people who are selfishly concerned with outcomes that will benefit their organization and orientation in the world. It helps then to lean into communities and economic schemes and industries and supply chains and marketing paradigms and social ontologies that they have established as value positions, and they work together, though in this selfish way, a self-serving way. They are a like attracts like sort of situation where those whose missions are aligned with theirs in a sense of justifying mass expenditures of public money in order to concentrate money, power, and influence into a few elites and a few mass corporations, have set everybody else at a disadvantage. And what this has caused is in effect a limitation of the potentials to preserve a vital way of life for everybody else in America. And it really is not, it can't be a surprising position, seen as the POTUS 47's entire life orientation is around self-importance, self-centeredness, how to inflate the value of his brand and convince others that his brand is so valuable that aligning with his brand will help to make those people rich as well. And he doesn't associate with regular everyday people. He wouldn't let his brand go onto anything that he didn't see as an opportunity for him to gain more prestige or more income or more power or more influence. He's just not focused on the facts of the common plight of the common human. He cannot afford, in his paradigm, any sacrifices to the ethically reasonable orientation of ensuring that in the elite pursuit of grandeur and profits and these sorts of things, that there's no orientation in what he does that considers for how his ambitions are actually suppressing other people from being able to just get along in life and be able to find their own way without struggling immensely for lack and being left in want and being discarded by the side of the road because those who should care, those who are in government, don't care. And so I'm trying to bring into this conversation the idea of, what this current administration is saying is that they are not willing to make sacrifices of some of their wants in order to allow for the potentials of establishing benefits for the rest of society, what I call the criterion echelon. What should be the baseline standard by which we measure like how advanced, technologically advanced, peacefully evolved our society is, should be weighed and measured off of this baseline metric, a standardization, a criterion that says this is what is the normal, expected, basis by which people live by. We know everybody in the criterion echelon should be living the good life. And for having an administration in a position of authority that's supposed to be caring for the interest of all parties involved, does not have the capacity to sacrifice some of their wants to make sure that everybody has a baseline standard of their needs met so that nobody gets left behind. And so essentially, the POTUS 47 regime is not even asking, not even demanding, but rather just leaving you with no other possibility in terms of outcome but for the regular, everyday American to sacrifice in order for people like him and this deviant echelon of very selfish, self-centered elite individuals in their echelon of society to make sure they have everything that they want. They're not willing to find a compromising position to which to say we're willing to compromise a few of our wants in order to make sure that everybody gets a baseline of needs so that everybody can get along, because that's a more secure situation for everyone across the board. Instead, they believe in the power of money to protect them from any of the negative outcome consequences and of a downfall in society and a disintegration of society, which will result from the lack of people having what they need to just get along. They're perfectly fine with society breaking down into a failed state, as long as that means that they can continue to prop themselves up in these concentrated, elite, concentrated pockets of thriving that they've established for themselves. And so I speak on experience that I believe resonates with most Americans that are feeling the pinch and experiencing the struggle and wondering what to do about how to make ends meet. I come from a humble background, and in my life experience, probably one of the toughest times of my life was when I suddenly became a single parent of 2 children. And I was attempting to go to school to better myself so that I can pursue my goals and ambitions to be in a position of being able to be a better income earner so that I can better provide for my children. And I was working full-time in multiple jobs, in part-time positions that made it equal out to full-time positions. And trying to make it on our own, paying for, the cost of living entirely burdened on and dependent upon my income alone. having to pay for childcare by myself, having to pay for rent and utilities and fuel and food and insurance and purchasing clothes and, hygiene essentials and household cleaning essentials and, basic staples of everyday life. All of these things, and then the big ticket items that come in of like having to, renew the tags on my car and buy new tires when my tires get worn out, and having to buy new shoes for work because my old ones wore out, and all of these things that just add up and compile over time and eat away at the substance of my earnings every single day. And it was tough. It was a very hard thing to do. I had to make a lot of sacrifices, and including sometimes having to be away from my children for long extended periods of time so that I could wholly focus on working, and seeking my family to be able to help out with my children to make sure that I could afford to live and work, to provide for them a way of life and try to get some sense of stability underneath me so I can get a grip on having all these things to pay for. It was a hard time, and it was so hard that, if not by the graces of, the powers that be and the universe knowing to only give me that which I would be able to bear, I was able to be blessed with the kindness of others who were able to help me to afford to live without being too drowned underwater. But the kindness of these people that helped me was not enough, and it was a position from which I still had to be obligated. It may not have been direct income type work, but it was like, I'll help you out with my skills and talents of being a builder or a caregiver and these sorts of things. I'll provide my skill set to help you in ways that you can't do for yourself, and in return you can help to lessen my burden for my cost of living, help me to be able to afford food and diapers for my kids and these sorts of things. And times were so hard for a very long time, where no matter how much I worked, there was just not enough earnings potential to come in. My children got sick, and I had to drop out of school because there was no taking them to daycare, and I nearly lost my job because I had to be there for my children. I was the only one able to. So I lost, my ambitions for going to school to be able to better myself. I did later on go back to school, only for COVID to hit to mess things up in that regard again, but it seems like every time I would get ahead, something else would come and, shake things up. But I'm a resilient person, and I am definitely a person of, here's the problem. What can I do to solve it? What are my options, and how reasonable are they? And is it going to get me to where I need to go? What sort of compromises do I have to make in order to make sure that this actually works to the outcomes that I desire, which is to make sure that I have the safety and security and stability in my home for myself and for my children. But times were so hard, many times where we lived in the dark. We couldn't turn lights on in our house because we couldn't afford the electric bill to go up. I cooked only foods that didn't require a lot of electricity to cook. And many times I went without eating for extended periods of time in order to make sure that my children had enough to eat for themselves. And this isn't any way to live. It's not a place of confidence. It's not a place from which you can build up. It's not a position from which you can level up your life. It's a struggle. and it's real, and it's hard. And it made me vulnerable and susceptible to predators who looked at my position as an opportunity for them to take advantage of my situation. And so there were a lot of not so great outcomes from that. And I had to learn, and the universe knew that there was a breaking point in there somewhere, and it shifted me out of that situation and put me in a new one with its own set of challenges in its own, but it was something that I was more able to work out a solution from. And not that I agree completely with what the outcomes were, but when there's other variables involved to which I can't myself solve for, there's only so much I can do. And while I do have family and they did help out in ways, what they offered me wasn't actual true support. It was more like a hand out or a hand up, and some chance to, make my way in some little, side gig job or something like that. It was never about what do you want to do and what do you see yourself capable of doing to, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get out of this situation so you can be on better standing. And when I came to them with those sorts of ideas, they didn't have belief or faith or confidence in me because, well, they kind of needed me to be in this precarious position because it benefited them, to be able to depend on me, to be of service to them in the ways that I was able to when I just needed side work to be able to afford to support my family. And as time went by and I adjusted my lifestyle to meet the new arrangements of my life that weren't necessarily chosen by me, but they were imposed upon me by forces beyond my control, I have taken to re-examining my position in society. After working for a company to the point where I sacrificed my physical body and capabilities to be of service to this company, the thanks that I got for it was to be treated like a warm body that filled a position, and that I was easily disposed of, and that all of my talents and all my capacities and capabilities that garnered me being hired into a position when I wasn't physically capable of performing that position, they just passed me along to wherever they could put a warm body to fill a position. And they degraded me and devalued me and then treated me subhuman. And I left that position because I could no longer be in such an exploitive arrangement with an employer who felt that just because they were giving me a paycheck for me showing up every day and putting all of my effort into helping them to succeed, they felt no sense of reciprocity in terms of helping me to succeed. The measly paycheck that they gave to me was enough, despite the fact that they cut my pay because I was no longer in a specialty position, because physically in my body, while I was still in the process of healing, wasn't able to do that job, but I was still able to work, and so they just put me wherever and cut my pay. And so I was in an even more precarious situation of how am I gonna get along. And these are the sorts of things that happened to me where I had to make the sacrifices in order for other people to succeed. And then these difficult situations and difficult circumstances where I had to choose between, caring for my children, providing them what they needed, and being able to live in a comfortable home with lights on all the time, or to have enough food that I could eat that day too. These are the difficult choices that I had to make, the sacrifices that I had to make. And I'm not saying that I would change any of it, because it was a very enlightening human experience. And in comparison to what other people have to experience, it could seem trivial and unconsequential compared to what others have to endure on the daily. And coming into the understanding of that, and then leaning deeply on my life's ambition and my life's work, and my worldview that I've cultivated since a very, very young age of living in poverty, of looking at the world and being like, how can things be different? How can we help people to be able to level up their lives? How can we prevent people from having to be dependent on social welfare systems in order to just get by? How can we make sure that people have good and decent work? How can we make sure people don't get put in positions of being preyed upon and victimized by predators? How can we build up resilience so that every family has a safe home space? How do we make the world more just and fair? How can we make sure that workers get fair compensation? How can we make sure that a single mother actually has a chance to make it so that her children can do well and be well? How can we make sure that people are recognized for the potential that they have when they are themselves in a stable and secure situation? And my life experience has been cultivating that paradigm and that worldview of which I can see ways to solve for those problems as I see them arise. And I have gone out and I have done personal, footwork experiences of walking through towns and cities across the nation and meeting people at their most vulnerable, those who are left by the side of the road, the houseless population, and then mothers that are struggling to just make ends meet, working service jobs that are paying them $1 an hour and then plus tips, and they're busting their butts and they're barely making it by. And talking with people who have these grand ideas of wanting to improve their communities, and having the will to create organization, but not having the capital resource by which to launch an organization that can fulfill those needs that they see in their community and they have the desire and the push and the want to solve for, And then going to community meetings and listening to, local leaders and community organizers talk about, their plans for budgets and budget cuts and how they're going to draw new revenues and how they're going to deal with, social problems. And, one of the big ones being, of course, how are we going to deal with this problem of houselessness? And many times they break it down in terms of dehumanizing the individuals that are in those precarious positions and looking them as this problem that they have to just deal with instead of human beings that need to be cared for and cared about. And, all of these experiences, taking in this information, because I'm trying to inform my understanding of, how did things get this way? Why do they persist in this way? What are people trying to do to solve for it? And what are the barriers to those solutions actually being, followed through on and established and built out and worked from? And so, and then understanding the larger paradigm, where it might be a social, local, manifestation, expression of violence or decay or other problematic situations, it always comes back into this much larger systemic issue at a societal level. And so I took great care to understand the sociological paradigm that we're in, the civilizational evolutionary paradigm that we're in, the political and government evolution that has brought us to where we are. And then the selfishness of humans and this human element, that oftentimes the human element and the individual who's a decision maker is the greatest barrier to things being solved, because they don't consider all aspects of resolution. And because they have their own informed bias and they have their own selfish needs or desires, that they're not willing to do what it takes to solve for something, because it takes them out of the realm of having, benefiting from the system as it is, the status quo as it is, or that they're beholden to, some other person that, their commitments and, backroom deals or something prevents them from being able to make the right decision now, because they are stuck in that commitment with these other people, and are not willing to go through the moral necessities of escaping that old world paradigm and finding themselves in a new one, because it requires change and accepting responsibility and self-development, and those are many things that individuals aren't willing to do. And so it goes again back to the whole sacrifice thing, that there are groups of people that aren't willing to sacrifice because the status quo works to their benefit, and sacrificing in any regard means that they can't enjoy the little pockets of thriving they've created for themselves. They're not willing to sacrifice their comforts and their sensibilities of, like, this is how they're used to getting along in society, because it would mean that they would have to change in their position and look themselves in the mirror in a new light that sees what's reflected back as a need for them to not be as they are, but to choose to be better in some way, and face the truth of their own ineptness or their own mistakes, and to find ways to fix it. It's a really difficult position to be in, but it's a necessary sacrifice for growth and development in a positive direction. And so a lot of it is just the lack of being considerate of others. It really is deeply rooted in the concept of sympathies, and where your sympathies lie really does determine, how things play out in your world and around you, in terms of outcome consequences based off of your decision making. Your choices attract outcomes that are the only things possible based off of what you are caring about, what you're focusing on, and what you're working towards. And it's not to say that your life position is changing everything, but it is very much like the concept of, the idea of having one thing change in one part of the world can create a tremendous ripple effect of a much larger outcome on the other end. What they say, like the butterfly effect, where a butterfly's wing can cause a tsunami somewhere else. And while that seems just like so abstract and such a big analogy, and how do you equate that to the reasonableness of your life situation and where you're at, but it's just basically like every choice has a consequence, and every choice, every step you take, every decision you make has a consequence, and you are attracting your orientation to that outcome, and you're going to have to face the consequence of that when you get there. And are you willing to do that wide-eyed and open and able to accept the mistakes that you made, apologize for them, for any of those that you've hurt, and be grateful for, like, now I can better see, what I have to do from my position to make better outcomes for myself and for others moving forward. And it's because we have so many people in positions of decision making that aren't that thoughtful and conscious of others, why we have so many people that are being left behind. Now imagine for a second having somebody in the role of POTUS who actually cares. The term presidential, to me, means understanding and having a power of conviction about the platforms from which you're positioning your policies and exactly what those policies are offering for other people. And that from that offering, it's showing the possibilities of what can come as a result of outcome consequences. You know, where I just took it before, showing you like there's negative outcome consequences for things that, you know, while you have a limited paradigm of choices, there's still many societal choices that impact your opportunities for choices, and it limits your world experience. It limits your capacity. It doesn't matter how much ambition you have, how much drive you have, how much you want for a better life for yourself and your children. Sometimes it's just not within the realm of possibilities because society is so designed to not mind the fact that you're not being put to the best potential of your best version. Society doesn't care about capitalizing on your potentials. It doesn't care about recognizing it. It doesn't care about opening doors of opportunity for you to express it. And so I think that having a president that's compassionate and able to sympathize with others, say, hey, I've been in a position before as well where I really wish the outcomes could change for the better for me. And being as I am, wanting to change my outcomes, looking for opportunities that are out there, and, you know, depending on what sort of opportunities are available to you, you're going to be able to make advances. Now, people like POTUS 47 have grown up with being surrounded by people who are there to just give them unlimited opportunities, make mistake after mistake, not have to fix them, but can just try it again. People there willing to support them, to ease their burden, to make it so they don't have to make tough decisions, never want for a single thing. How can an individual from that world paradigm break out of that to put themselves in the shoes of others, to be sympathetic? It would be possible to not be able to be from that world experience and to still sympathize, but what it would take in order to sympathize with them is the care and the concern and the willingness to listen, a willingness to empathize with another individual and to be compelled to act on their behalf, to take action, to give them the care to which one should deserve if you're truly concerned about the fact that life should not be such a struggle for any individual. And coming to find that it's a struggle for you, we should really have a world that works out better opportunities for you to solve for those problems for yourself. We should have leaders, and we should have organizations, and we should have social systems and governing systems that help you to help yourself. Because I, as an individual, don't want to have to worry about you getting along in your life with the basic needs. I want to just know that you're doing well, so you're not my concern. So that I know that me not having to concern myself with knowing whether or not you're doing well, I just know you're living the good life because our systems are so designed to help you to achieve that. I can go take risks for higher things because I don't have to worry about your well-being. And I believe that government's responsibility should be about recognizing what do we have to sacrifice about our existing world models, our existing governing organizations, our existing social paradigm, our existing economic orientations? What do we have to sacrifice about those old world models in order to have the free hands to grasp the leverages, the handles of new world models that we establish for ourselves, so we can lift everybody up to that standard criterion basis for which they can live the good life? So then I don't have to be concerned about them, and they don't have to be struggling in the self-concern of like, how can I make it along in a world that is so designed to work against me? Because that working against me is what benefits those in the deviant echelon who are too selfish to care that there are other people in the world. And so I hope that something about me speaking to my own experiences resonates with other people's experiences. I'm not seeking, pities, and I'm not seeking people to think of me as, like a lost cause or something like that. I'm still working towards resolving these issues, and I know certainly I could have used all of my will, all of my might, all my talents, all my skills, all my capabilities to be selfish and to use those in a way that could benefit my position, and I would be flourishing if I was willing to turn a blind eye to the fact that the only reason why I could flourish is because of the very limited opportunities as they are. I still have opportunities that other people don't have, because my skills and my talents and my abilities, my situational context, my historical context, and my fine context give me different options. But I recognize that that wouldn't be satisfying for me, because I would know that I would be so focused on doing for me and earning the money so that I can, live the good life for myself. But I would feel in that same regard that I'm leaving others behind. And so I put myself in a position of being like, I'm committed to living a lifestyle that's a position of sacrifice, so that of some of my wants, so that I can be in a position of understanding what the world needs, so that I can put myself in the position of helping to solve for that by building out systems that can help to innovate out this social dilemma as to why the criterion echelon of society is not living the good life right now, and in such a way where it's not going to war with the deviant echelon of society, because all of them are so equipped with the capabilities and the power and the money and the influence to attack anything that would suggest that, their world paradigm wasn't going to be able to be held up in it the way it is. My interest is to make that world paradigm obsolete. I don't want to prevent them from living out their best lives and living the good life. I don't want to drag them down to some lower point, so there's a lowest common denominator between people. I just want to be able to find a mutually beneficial orientation with one another, given we are a society of varied people and various, circumstances and situations. How can we find the best position by which we can lift up the criterion echelon so they get to live the good life too? So I want to lift everybody up and care less about trying to drag down the upper echelon of society. I want to compel them to be willing to make some personal sacrifices, and not in a sense where it's like they have to go without, but rather recognizing that if they would be willing to find better ways to align their money-making capabilities, then it could create more abundant opportunities for them to generate, wealth and standing and whatnot, but it wouldn't be to the cost and disadvantage of other people. There is a possibility for that. There is a way to innovate out that problem of how do we make sure that everybody gets to live the good life. And the sacrifice is more of letting go of this sense that there has to be an us versus them in mentality, in terms of the upper echelon of society and the criterion echelon of society. Or even the lower echelon of society, those who are living in the deepest levels of poverty. There's a common interest in our mutualities. And we are brilliant people. We're a brilliant species. We can do anything we set our minds to. And I do believe that there's a way for us to find best practices to be able to bring everybody into accord of a criterion echelon of society. And to recognize that we cannot blindly assume that there aren't going to be pitfalls in society from time to time as things change and shift, industries shift, climates shift, our resource surpluses, resource commons shift, our social orientations, all these things shift. And so there's going to be time to time when people are going to fall below that criterion echelon. And society is meant to have a mechanized way of recovery to help bring people back into the fold of the criterion echelon. And that there's going to be many people who are going to be looking for points of exploitation, that are going to try to drive some sort of point of exploit, a cornering of society, certain populations of people into a position of exploitation so that there is more to extract from them for the personal gains and benefits of a few. There are going to be bad actors with nefarious intent as such, where they will exploit any weakness that they see in the system. And so we have to be able to innovate out for those sorts of things. When we see these points of vulnerability, these, events of exploitation, the orientations of organizations or groups of people or even individuals that are positioning themselves as such to be able to exploit from the harm caused by other people that brings them out of being able to live the good life, we have to solve for that and do so in an innovative way. And do so in a way that is about redemption, making sure those people are brought back into the fold that's in accord with everybody else. There's more than enough in society to provide abundance for everyone's need. But there is no room for exploiters taking advantage of others for their own personal greed. And I really believe that our position right now is such that we have the POTUS 47 regime where they're setting up policies that are aligned in such a way that disadvantages populations of people, that intentionally create points of exploitation and vulnerability and weakness, and then rigging systems in favor of those in the deviant echelon of society to be able to take advantage of those who have been weakened by these systems being broken down. In the name of efficiency, they have taken away social safety nets and supports, where now it's doubtful that we will be able to retain the accommodation and provisioning of individuals for quality education, for the SNAP nutritional assistance programs, for child care, early education programs, for Medicare, senior care, disability care, Entire healthcare systems are going to break down. Entire education systems are going to break down. And entire childcare systems are going to break down. Social cohesion is going to break down, because many people that before that were dependent on these systems, like SNAP, to be able to help to pay to afford their food, now we're not going to have enough food, and they're going to have to make the hard decisions like I had to make for my children, where a parent's probably going to have to go hungry a lot in order to make sure their children have enough. And they're going to have to live with their lights off, or to not turn an air conditioner on when it's too hot outside because you can't afford the power bill, or to not turn on the heater when it's too cold outside because you can't afford the power bill, to skimp out on medications that you need because you can't afford to pay the pharmacist. All of these things, these piecemeal solutions, the social safety nets that we've created together over time as a realization of see a need, fill a need. We can't let things be this way, because it doesn't work for society to be, in accord. And things in the system start to break down, and we start disintegrating from one another. And there's factioning, and there's infighting, and there's pitting side against side, and there's more exploitation. People become more desperate, and then it's not just the deviant echelon of society in the upper echelon, but also the deviant echelon in the lower echelon becomes so desperate that they rob and they steal. They'll do violence against others because they see no other way to get at what they need, because they've been put in a desperate situation and opportunities are not there. And so their mind, left to their own devices, in a system that has taught them and ingrained them and locked them into a dog-eat-dog, mighty crush the weak, free-for-all hellscape paradigm, what else do they do but to resort to doing bad? And then there's not enough people in society doing good enough to be able to pay revenues into a state system to be able to afford for protections of all people. And so violence proliferates, and society begins to disintegrate even more. And it's a slow erosion, but it manifests in so many different ways. And then you see people getting desperate and trying to take, actions into their own hands. They'll find somebody to blame for it and then go after them. If only that person could be stopped, then everything would be solved. And then we get these crazy people that go out and do political violence, because they think it's the politicians' fault why this happened. Sure, decision makers are definitely not being considerate of how do we solve for these problems, enough such that if they were, then the problems would be solved. And, economic systems are being rigged out of the favor of people that are entrenching these problems, so there is no way to, build out of these systems. And so you find people that are going and retaliating against CEOs of companies. And you see this growing number of dissatisfied people that are willing to disintegrate from our unity as a society, as a nation, as a people, because they don't see themselves as belonging. Not just because society is not making a place of belonging and welcoming them in with invite, because certainly that's happening, but it's also these people say, I can't see myself as being a part of this. It's very much likened to the story I just told about me working for a company to the point where it cost me my body's physical capabilities. And that instead of respecting me as a person and recognizing, that I have value too, and that this isn't just a you get to extract from me, like this has to be reciprocity. I dropped out of that system of, being an employee to a company because I deserved more respect and they were capable of or willing to give. And while my response to that was a lot less, extreme because of my personality, my temperament, and my care and concern for polite society and civil order, following rules and such, not everybody has that personal alignment. And they don't have the commitments to uphold, right from wrong. And especially, there's many people that see if politicians aren't even able to be held accountable to the rule of law. We have a felon in the position of POTUS right now. That reflects poorly on people that say, well, the law is not the same for all people. If you have money, if you have power, you have influence, the law works to your favor, and you do not have consequences, and you don't have to take responsibility for your actions. You can get out of jail free card. And for everybody else, it's a life of suffering and struggle, and very much a dog-eat-dog world. Not because you are making it that way, because you are left to your own devices, and the systems are just so designed that you have no other means by which you can orient yourself to society. Say, I don't belong in any place other than what they've made me out to be, what you've made for me, and you've made me into a criminal because you're not making the most out of my potential, you're not recognizing it, and you're not making opportunities for me to be able to grasp and pursue. And then you're convincing me because of whatever various reasons, whether it's class, color, creed, religion, ethnicity, all these things, those are the reasons why I don't have opportunities in society, because society has rigged those systems out of favor of many people and rigged it in the favor of a very particular type of people. And so in resorting to what they sense is all they have left in terms of options, many people will choose to do the wrong thing because they don't have any sense of duty or ownership or responsibility to society as it is. And so there's no reason for them to follow rules, and they're perfectly fine with breaking laws because there's no other way to get along in life. And then they fall into that trap of, thinking they're a criminal, and, it makes them do even worse things. And there's no systems, and the criminal justice system is about punitive punishment, harming and making everybody out to be a criminal, and then exploiting them as slave labor while they're imprisoned. That whole system is rigged, and it's especially against certain types of individuals that can be distinguished by color, class, creed, these sorts of things. And so those people are left without opportunities to be a part of society in any way other than in a deviant way. And they fall out, and society disintegrates. Social order breaks down. Domestic order is eroding day by day because of this. And instead of having responsible, caring, compassionate, considerate leaders in positions of authority and decision making that say, we recognize that the system is not working in such a way that everybody could at the very least adhere to the simple civic duties and responsibilities, social and civic ideals of abiding by laws, being active participants and contributors to society in a positive way. And so because that's not the system, and people can't naturally orient that way because the system's rigged out of people's favor, what do we do to solve for this? How do we innovate that problem out? And instead of considering that, instead of researching as to why that's a problem and where the hitch is and where the hinge point is to solve for this, these people are instead finding ways to rig systems into their favor and leave everybody else in a free-for-all hellscape. And that's what the POTUS 47 regime is doing. They're not considering how to make your lives better. Their policy decision-making has been focusing on punitive, punishment, confinement, restriction, removing those support systems that you've been dependent on, and trying to force you into a position of essentially slave labor. You need to go out and you need to work and get a job, and not considering any of the variables to which are preventing you from being able to work. And they're removing workers' rights. They're removing protections for the environment. They're removing all of these things that make it reasonable for you to be, a participant and contributor to society. They're removing everything that makes this place worth defending with your adherence to the rule of law and your adherence to the social contract of showing up every day and bring your best and do your best. Participate and contribute. Help make America a better place. Help make the world a better place. They're taking away everything that we need in order for us to get along with one another and make everything work for everybody's best interest involved. And so I just, in closing, want to remind people that the POTUS 47 and the MAGA political dynasty that is being created in various different elected individuals and appointed individuals, their vision is a path of progress that requires sacrifice from the most vulnerable, the most weak, the most disadvantaged people in society, while creating schemes of benefit and leverage and empowerment and enrichment for those in the deviant, selfish upper echelons of society. They are the people in the highest positions of office are prioritizing their own interests over the interests of administrating a social accord that creates domestic order, promotes domestic tranquility, and makes sure that everybody has what is required in order for them to get along and live the good life. I believe that becoming president is a very ambitious task, but it's one that is marked by a central idea of unification. But it's what you choose to unify things around, what you choose everything is going to coalesce around, and what you see out in the societal problems as what you need to focus on, and what you are seeking in others that helps to encourage them in their pursuits, and what they encourage in you in your pursuits, for you to work together in a collaborative way to succeed at something. What you are going to say is what we're fighting for, and what you say it is that we're going to work towards, and how you say that it's worth it, and how you compel others to become involved in that. And let's look at the POTUS 47 regime that says it's most important that you blindly accept the false narratives that they tell you when they go back on policy decisions and campaign promises. They expect you to fall in line when they are dehumanizing individuals and breaking the law and disregarding the law in order to create this fanfare of spectacle out of the immigration system that isn't about upholding laws or integrity or preserving and protecting America, because it doesn't even make America a place worth defending. Because it's not about making America great. It's about distinguishing an elite class of individuals. And the only way to do that is to make sure that there is somebody that you have created an enemy out of. And they have not yet got to the point, though they are definitely working on it, of making an enemy out of the people who would ever dare resist what they're trying to do. When you really think about it, if POTUS 47 was required tomorrow to make a sacrifice on behalf of the American people by way of abdicating his role in his profit-earning schemes of cryptocurrency and abdicating his role in his business the Trump empire and brand empire, if he had to abdicate all of that, put it into a true blind trust, and not seek to make money off of his brand and off of his name and any of these money-making schemes that him and his family have created, where he doesn't, take political trips to Scotland to open his own, golf course and constantly go golfing and then, make millions of dollars of changes on the White House, though, he is supposed to be some sort of real estate guy, so I guess that's in line with his interests. But instead of focusing on spending money in these ways that are helping him prop up his image and to let him experience golf as much as he wants and to go out and run his business and run the show, if he was required tomorrow to sacrifice all of that, leave it in a blind trust, let his children run the show, like, he said he was going to do in his first administration. And if that's all it would take in order to save enough money in America to help keep afloat our social safety nets just long enough until he's out of this term of office, if that's all it would take, is he couldn't go golfing anymore, he couldn't self-promote, and he couldn't, do money-making schemes for his businesses and couldn't seek to create cryptocurrencies for himself and his family, if he had to let all of that go and just focus on being president and serving the interests of the American people and following through on the promises that he made on the campaign trail, like as if it was a contract he made with the American people. I don't know, but ask yourself, do you think he could do it? Not even just would he do it, because I think his behavior and his attitude and direction of his heart thus far, only 6 months in, right, has proven, as such, that he's not ready to focus on the American people and to do right by the American people. But if that's what it would take, if he would do that, do you think it's possible that he could do that and not turn it into a grievance against him? Say, oh, look what I had to give up in order to do my job. Do you think that he would raise a fuss about it, make it a part of the daily newsreel of, look at all the sacrifices I had to make for the American people? I can't do, the thing that I'm good at, which is self-promotion. I couldn't be selfish anymore. I had to actually care about others. Woe is me, victimhood. I don't think that he could do it from a sense of dignity. I don't think that he could do it with a sense of pride and prestige in the role and the responsibility and the sacrifices that he needs to make in that role. If he wanted to go out and make golf courses and, sell off, junk novelty and promote cryptocurrencies and inflate his brand, he could have done all those things outside of the office of president. But he realized there was a way to gain personally from that position. And it's not like he's doing it because he's trying to help to, benefit America through his, continuation of being this great businessman he claims to be. Instead, it's like, how can I exploit the position that I have been entrusted to fulfill in such a way that I get personal gains of it, and in the meantime, I'm going to rack up this tremendous bill on, the behalf of the taxpayers, while slapping them in the face of getting budget cuts, and we're cutting funding, and we're firing people, and they're losing their jobs, and the government positions are being shut down, and all of these safety and regulation things we've developed over time, all of that's getting shut down because we can't afford any of that stuff. then we need to spend all this money to be able to create concentration camps to get all these immigrants to get out of here, and despite the fact that the price of everything's going to go up because there's no more cheap labor in America. And he would not be able to do it. He would not be able to sacrifice everything he has rigged in favor for himself personally in order to save enough money to be able to help to keep the systems running that benefit everyday Americans. And I challenge people to ask him to do that. And I suggest to you to keep an open mind and listen closely to what he says in terms of his response when you ask him, are you willing to make the sacrifice for us? Are you willing to let go of all this vanity and this flair and this spectacle and this self-promotion and, self-enrichment and, self-entertainment of going out and playing golf? Are you willing to let all of that go since we're in such a fiscally difficult position, right? Are you willing to let all that go just for the next 3.5 years so we can save a few dollars so that we can keep alive these programs that are going to help the most desperate and vulnerable in America? Ask him that, and then listen to what he says, how he responds. I don't think he has the capability. I don't think that he has the cognitive awareness to be sympathetic to other people's needs to the point where he would not selfishly charge the American taxpayers, the money to build a ballroom in the people's house. How many people are going to be able to benefit from that? Do you really think that's a fiscally responsible thing to do at a time where you're telling us we have to cut funding because we need to, shore up our bottom line here in America? I don't think it's fiscally responsible. Sure, maybe if, he wanted to leave his mark on the presidency and say, as a real estate person, I've helped to improve the real estate of the White House. If he personally paid for everything, okay. Or if he waited until closer to the end of his term, after he's actually fixed the economy as he said he would do, then it would be more reasonable to put forth those types of expenditures. It wouldn't be a slap in the face of the American people to say, I know you're not going to have food stamps, coming up next year, but we'll have a nice ballroom, And so I think that if we're really looking at how we have to align ourselves with leadership in the future, it should be about those people that understands the concept of sacrifice, understands the struggle is real in America, and that it is hard to get by, and that all we need is a little bit of opportunity. We don't want a hand up, we don't want a hand out, we don't want some impossible capitalistic chance at a big break. We each want to benefit from opportunity of a fair shake. Here is the means by which you can live the good life, and we are welcoming you with invite to this situation that you can thrive on, and so let's thrive together. And we should be seeking leaders that have that type of integrity, leaders who are like, I see a problem and I want to fix it. I see a need, I want to fill that need. And we can do it in such a way that is not at the disadvantage of anyone. We can do it in a way that makes sure that that actually means that America's working for everyone. And we can do it in such a way where nobody gets left behind. It's fair, just, reasonable, and right to expect our leaders to put forth value propositions with generous offerings, with valuable solutions that can mission align everybody into a collective best interest of pursuing a social accord, a domestic order, a domestic tranquility with one another, inculcating social and civic ideals that say, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. We should have leaders who inspire us all to ordain, establish, preserve, protect, and promote the Constitution. And as it is right now, we have the POTUS 47 regime that is rejecting, denying, pushing back, dismantling, disregarding the Constitution. And so I don't believe that they are worthy leaders. I don't think anybody that's aligning with the POTUS 47 is worthy of leadership. I don't think that anybody that they are promoting as being a potential successor, if he does choose to leave his position, I don't believe any of them have the capacity to solve for the needs of America in such a way that in its own right will not be another form of rigging systems in the favor of the elite echelon of society. These selfish deviants that are perfectly fine with everybody else making sacrifices in order for them to benefit. America deserves better than predatory elitists gaining positions in office. America deserves better than being exploited by their government. America deserves better than these political frauds refusing to do just the basic decency of seeking partnership with the American people in service. And with that, I want to thank you for your valuable time, attention, and consideration. Thank you for sacrificing these many minutes of your time with me. I hope that somewhere in all of this, I've piqued your interest, and that somehow you see that our values align, and that you may be willing to further consider how I could prove out my capacity to be a worthwhile leader, somebody that is truly tried and true, trustworthy person. I don't expect people to blindly follow me or to assume that I should just be given a chance. That's why I make these offerings of insight in the form of these videos. I'm public sharing as much as I can to increase awareness of my sensibilities, my accountabilities, my response, and my ability and my sense of responsibility to myself, to my family, to my fellow humans, to my nation, to the world, to the planet. I really do believe that stewardship is our calling as a people. And I hope to inspire individuals to take that on, because I believe it's the one thing that can be individual, independent, interdependent, and a mutual selfishness. It's a sense of like me taking care of myself helps make sure you don't have to take care of me. And that you taking care of yourself means that I don't have to take care of you. But there has to be a mutual support, mutual provisions and accommodations and stewardship that make sure that everybody can retain that sense of living the good life, that criterion we have to be able to achieve together. And that's what our unity should be about. We can build up a sense of common interests, common respects, those mutualities, and do so in such a way where we can reintegrate our brothers and sisters back into society who have deviated from the path of, peaceful accord, to help them to redeem the time, to no longer take this very selfish, self-centered, deviant orientation with society and the world, come back into the fold and be in the human community with us in such a way where, we're all in this together. And now imagine what is possible when we have many different individuals working together towards one goal, and doing so in a way that's compelling, spontaneously compelling us to participate and contribute, where it's not force and it doesn't go against, your sensibilities. Like, this is just, this is fair, this is reasonable, this is right. It's certainly not perfect. It's going to be, just like we have promised as a nation, an ever more perfect union. We have to work at perfecting it. We have to improve our systems. We have to establish best practices. And we have to be willing to change and keeping an open mind to the possibilities that are out there, what could come, what is in the realm of potentials, if we just choose to move forward together in a new direction, blaze a trail of unknown certainties, like going into the unknown, but with this far off, far-reaching, far expansive vision of what is in the realm of possibility, what we could potentially do together, and work towards that. Aspire to, inspire to aspire before we expire, as they say, because we have so much potential, and I'd hate for us to lose it because of the short-sighted selfishness of a few deviant echelons and our deviant individuals in the upper echelons of society, or even those in the lower echelon of society who choose to be deviants as well. We have to be able to find that common through line, a continuum of an imperishable world peace. I believe it's possible, and I hope that I'm speaking to the higher selves, the better angels of your nature, and the best version of yourself, and that deep sensibility within yourself of what you know is right in your heart. And I hope that that is resonating with you, a sense of, we could do this. Because I know I can't, but we can. With that, again, grateful for your valuable time, attention, and consideration. Until next time, I appreciate you.